Assalamu alaikum. Today is our second lecture of thermodynamics, and today's outline is basically we'll identify the vocabulary associated with the thermodynamics. Then there will be the review of the metric system and the English unit system. Then we'll explain the basic concepts of thermodynamics such as system, state, state postulate, equilibrium process and cycles. Then we'll have some review of the concepts of temperature, temperature scales, pressure, its absolute and gauge values. And at the end we'll have the problem solving technique that is involved in the thermodynamics course. So thermodynamics, as we have studied in the last lecture, the definition, the basic concepts, in this lecture there will be the elaboration of all these properties. So what is thermodynamics? As we have studied, it is the branch of science which deals with the energy. The name thermodynamics stems from the Greek words. Therm mean heat and dyna mean power. Transfer of heat, transfer of power. So what is the conservation of the energy principle? During an interaction, energy can change from one form to another form, but the total amount of the energy remains constant. That is known as the law of conservation of energy or the conservation principle. Then we will have the first law of thermodynamics, an expression which is basically the conservation of the energy principle. The first law asserts that energy is a thermodynamic property. Here in this picture you can see that there is a stone that is at the higher end of this mountain, and when it is having some kind of height, there is basically the potential energy that is stored in this. Here the value of the potential energy is 10. Any kind of unit energy we have joule. So basically we can say that here at this point the potential energy is 10 joule and the kinetic energy is 0. When this rock starts falling in the downward direction, its potential energy converted into the kinetic energy. Here at the middle point we can see that the value of the potential energy is 7 units and the value of kinetic energy is 3 units. When we'll have the sum, it is again 10. So the total amount of the energy remains same. So it is according again to the conservation of energy principle. When it strikes with the ground, the total potential energy would be 0, and before touching the ground kinetic energy would be maximum, like 10. So energy cannot be created, cannot be destroyed, but it can only transform, it can change from one form of energy to another form of energy. Now we'll have the second law of thermodynamics. We have studied the zeroth law that was basically related with the thermal equilibrium of the bodies. If one body is in equilibrium with the second, then second with the third, then the three bodies are in equilibrium with each other. Then we have the first law. It was related with the conservation of energy principle. Now we study the second law of thermodynamics. It states that the energy has quality as well as the quantity, and the actual processes occurs in the direction of decreasing the quality of the energy. We can also define second law in terms of entropy. Entropy is basically the disturbance inside the system. So we can state that the second law of thermodynamics tells us that the energy of a system always decreases. Then the types of thermodynamics. We have classical thermodynamics, we have statistical thermodynamics. A classical thermodynamics is basically the macroscopic approach to the study of thermodynamics that does not require the knowledge of the behavior of the individual particles. In the classical thermodynamics, we basically study the body as a whole. We don't use the microscopic approach or the approach that is used upon the molecules or the atoms of the body. It provides basically a direct and a easy way to the solution of engineering problems and it is used in its text. Then we have the statistical thermodynamics. It is basically the microscopic approach based upon the average behavior of the large number of individual particles. Like if there is a gas in the container, we can study the behavior of the molecule that are contained in it, and then the average behavior of these molecules will becomes the behavior of the gas inside the container. So here in this picture, that is basically a pseudo wrestler. You have seen that the conservation of energy principle for the human body, like it consumes energy, like there is an energy input, it consumes by food. The energy input is 5 units, the storage is 1 unit, and the remaining energy is basically expelled out during the fight. And then there is a hot coffee cup. Its temperature is 70 degrees Celsius and the environment temperature is basically 20 degrees Celsius. After some time, the coffee inside it becomes cold. That is because the heat flows in the direction of decreasing temperature. So by this example, we can also define a third way to define are basically the second law. We can say that the temperature of a body always decreases, or the heat flows from the hotter body to the colder body. So these are basically the ways you can define the second law of thermodynamics. Next are the application areas of the thermodynamics. Thermodynamics is basically involved in all the domestic and the commercial areas of the life. You can see that in our home there are various examples of the thermodynamics and the machines that are operating upon the phenomena of thermodynamics. Like we have a solar collector, then we have hot water geyser, then we have air conditioning system, heating system in our home. These are all the application areas of the thermodynamics. Here you can see that there is a refrigerator, again that is a common domestic appliances. Then we have aeroplane. Aeroplane uses the turbines. Basically the turbojets are used to fly the aeroplanes, and turbines are the major examples of the thermodynamics. Here these are some cooling devices like fans and inducer fans. Here in our human body we have also thermodynamics involved, how we maintain the temperature of the body when the outside is cold or the warm, and these are basically the industrial applications. Now there are some important dimensions and the units that are used in the thermodynamics. We'll discuss them one by one. So any physical quantity can be characterized by a dimension that is fixed. The magnitude is assigned to the dimension is known as the unit. Some basic units that you have studied in your intermediate classes also are like mass. We have the term m. For the length we have term L. For time, temperature. These are basically the primary or the fundamental dimensions. While there are some other quantities like velocity, energy, volume, they are basically expressed in terms of the secondary dimensions, and these secondary dimensions are basically derived from the first. Like velocity, we have meter per second. The meter is basically used for the length, and the second is basically from the time. So the unit of velocity are basically derived from the primary dimensions. Then we have volume, meter cube. There are basically the 3 length units that are involved in volume. Like for the volume we have the formula length cross width cross height. So the length we have L. Width is, again there is a unit of length, again we have L, and for the thickness we have also L. So that the units are basically the meter cubes. These are the secondary units. Then there are 2 systems for measuring the units. One is known as the metric or the SI system, and the second is known as the English system. The metric system is a simple analogical system based upon the decimal relationship between the various units. And the English system, it has no apparent systematic numerical base, and the various units in the system are related to each other rather than arbitrarily. Here in this table of SI units, you can see that length and its units. For the mass you have kg time second. For the temperature you have the Kelvin scale, degree Celsius scale, and the Fahrenheit scale, but among them the SI is basically the Kelvin scale. Then you have the electronic current. For that you have amperes. Then for the amount of light you have candela CD, and for the matter you have mole. These are some prefixes. Now the one unit is a base unit, and how it is multiplied and converted into the bigger unit. Like you have tera. Like a common example is you are using basically the hard drives in your home or in computers and the laptop. You can say that I have how much terabytes, how much gigabytes, how much megabytes, how much kilobytes. So these are basically the prefixes. Okay. So the 1 terabyte is equal to 10 raised to power 12. Similarly, the gigabytes equal to 10 raised to power 9, megabytes 10 raised to power 6, kilobytes 10 raised to power 3, hecto 10 raised to power 2, decabytes 10 raised to power 1, deci 10 raised to power minus 1, like divided by 10, centi 10 raised to power minus 2, like divided by 100, milli 10 raised to power minus 3, micro 10 raised to power minus 6, nano and pico. Some SI and English units and their conversions. Like for the weight or the mass you are using basically the kg, that is basically used in the SI units, but in the English system you are using basically the pounds. So 1 pound is basically equals to 0.45359 kgs. Similarly, 1 feet is equals to 0.3048 meters. Now the work. The relation of work is basically force multiplied by the distance, and the units are joule, which is equals to the Newton meter. Newton comes from the force and meter comes from the distance. So these are again some are the units of the work. 1 cal is equals to 4.1868 joules, and 1 British thermal unit BTU is equals to 1.0551 kilojoule. Now the force is equals to F is equals to ma, mass into acceleration. The units are Newton. Then the 1 Newton is basically equals to 1 kilogram of mass into meter per second square, and 1 pound foot is equals to 32.174 pound foot into square. Now these are the some examples how the weight is equals to mg. Weight is equals to mass into gravitational acceleration. And here in this example, this is related with the relative magnitude of the force. Here is the apple. Here are the basically 4 apples. Here are apples are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. How the message and their interpretations are related. Now the dimensional homogeneity. All the equation must be dimensionally homogeneous, like how the units are converted and how they must be equal with the left hand side equals to the right hand side. All the non-primary units like the secondary units can be found by the combination of the primary units. For example, Newton is equals to kg meter per second square, and foot pound is equals to 32.174 pounds into foot per second square. They can be expressed more conveniently as unit conversion ratios. How these units are converted, like Newton per kg into meter per second square is equals to 1, and that 1 pound foot divided by 32.174 is equals to 1. The unit conversion ratios are identically equals to 1 and are unitless. Like this must be equals to this. Like when you divide left side by the units of the right hand side, after the equality you should get 1. That is basically the dimensional homogeneity. To be dimensionally homogeneous, all the terms in an equation must have the same units. Now these are the definitions of the system: surroundings, boundary, control, volume. Now the system is basically the quantity of a matter or a region in a space that is chosen for the study. Here you can see that this is the system for the study. Outside the system you have basically the surroundings of the system. And the thing that separates the surroundings from the system is known as the boundary of the system. The boundary of the system can be imaginary or can be real. So the definitions are: surroundings, the mass or the region outside the system. For boundary, the real or the imaginary surfaces that separates the system from its surroundings. The boundary of a system can be fixed or can be movable. The system may be considered to be closed or open. These are basically the types of the system. Here you can see that is the moving boundary for a system. There is a gas that is present inside it and you are heating the gas. When the gas is heated, it starts expanding. So this movable piston starts moving upward. This boundary is basically the movable boundary. But these walls are the fixed. So this boundary is basically the fixed boundary of the system. Now the closed system or the control mass system. A fixed amount of mass and no mass can cross the boundary of the system. In a closed system, mass cannot cross the boundary of the system, but the energy does. Now if the mass is fixed, you can say that a closed system is basically the example of the control mass. Now the control volume. An open system is always termed as an control volume system. In an open system, mass as well as the energy crosses the boundary of the system. Here you have the example of a turbine. The mass comes in, that is basically a compressor. The mass comes in, it compresses and then it leaves. Similarly, energy comes in and energy comes out. The common water heater in our homes or the common water geyser is also the example of the control volume. Now the control surface. The boundaries of a control volume, these are basically the boundaries. These are basically imaginary boundaries. As you can see here, that boundary is basically an imaginary boundary. That is not a real boundary. So you can say that it is basically your control surface. Now the properties of the system. Properties are basically the characteristics of the system. Some familiar properties are pressure, temperature, volume and mass. These properties are considered to be either intensive or extensive properties. Intensive properties are basically those properties which are basically independent of the mass of the system, such as the temperature, pressure and density. And intensive properties are basically those which are dependent upon the mass of the system, like mass and volume. Specific properties, these are basically the properties, they are specified with the mass. When you will divide a property with the mass, it becomes specific, like specific volume. When you divide the volume by mass, so it becomes the specific volume. Now the matter is made up of atoms that are widely spaced in the gas phase. Yet it is very convenient to disregard the atomic nature of the substance and the view at it is continuous, homogeneous with no holes in the continuum. A continuum is basically the phase of the system. The continuum idealizes and allows us to treat the properties as the point functions and to assume the property may vary continually in space with no jump or no discontinuities. This idealization is valid as long as the size of the system we deal with is large relative to the space between the molecules, like the gas phase. This is the case in practically all the problems, and this in context will limit our consideration to the basically the gas model. Despite the large gap between the molecules, a substance can be treated as the continuum because of the very large number of the molecules even in the extremely small volume. So to be a continuum, there is basically not a fixed rule that the body should be in the solid phase. It can be in the liquid phase. Like in this, the gaps between the molecules are the large, but the number of molecules are so enough that we can treat it as a continuum. Now the density and the specific gravity. The density is basically mass per unit volume. When you divide the mass with the volume, the quantity becomes the density. And as I have told you earlier, that the specific volume is basically volume per unit mass. You can see that it is basically the converse relation of the density. So you can see that the specific volume is basically the reciprocal of the density. Now the specific gravity. Specific gravity is basically the ratio of the density of a substance to the density of some standard substance like water. So the specific gravity of to define the specific gravity of a liquid, you have the density of that liquid at the numerator and you will divide it with the density of water. In this table there are some specific gravities of the substances like you have water, blood, seawater, gasoline, alcohol, mercury, wood, and at the last you have basically air. Now the specific weight. The weight of a unit volume of a substance is known as the specific weight. That is denoted by gamma, and gamma is equals to rho into g. Rho is basically the density and g is the gravitational constant. Now the state and equilibrium. Thermodynamics deals with the equilibrium states. And what is equilibrium? It is basically the state of balance. In an equilibrium state, there are no longer unbalanced potentials or the driving forces within a system. Equilibrium can be of many types like thermal equilibrium, mechanical equilibrium, phase equilibrium, and chemical equilibrium. What are the thermal equilibrium? It is the temperature that should be same throughout the entire system. Then in mechanical equilibrium, if there is no change in the pressure at any point of the system, that is in the mechanical equilibrium. In phase equilibrium, if a system involves two phases and when the mass of each phase reaches an equilibrium level and stays there, like you have liquid phase and you have a gas phase. Initially there is a liquid phase which is in more quantity as the gas phase. You are supplying the heat and then after some time 50% of the substance in the liquid phase and 50% in the gas phase, and there is no change between these two phases, so it is in the phase equilibrium. Then there is chemical equilibrium. If the chemical composition of a system does not changes with the time, then there is no chemical reaction that will occur and the system will becomes in the chemical equilibrium. Here in this example there are basically two different states of the system. In this the volume is low, and this you can see that there is a much high volume. And in this picture you are seeing a closed system that is reaching the thermal equilibrium. Here at different points you have different temperature, you are giving it a time for settling, and after some time the whole substance has the equal temperature. Now the state postulates. The number of the properties required to fix the state of the system is known as the state postulates. Like in this example, if you have to tell the state postulate, there are basically two properties: temperature 25 degrees Celsius, volume 0.9 meter cube per kg, that is basically the specific volume. So at this state basically the postulates are two and you are fixing the state. The state of a simple compressible system is completely specified by two independent intensive properties, like you can have temperature, you can have energy, and so on. Simply compressible systems. In a system, if a system involves no electric, magnetic, gravitational, motion and other surface tension effects. Now we have the processes and cycles. What is basically a process? Any change that a system undergoes from one equilibrium state to another equilibrium state is known as the process. Here in this diagram there is a property upon the y-axis and there is a property upon the x-axis. Like this property could be temperature and that could be volume or the pressure. Now that is state number 1 and this is state number 2. Now if the system moving from state number 1 to state number 2, so that is basically the definition of the process. And here you are having basically the path of the process. Like if the system is moving from 1 to 2, this is basically the direction of the path. And if the system is moving from 2 to 1, this is basically the path. Now path. The series of states through which the system passes during a process, like I have told you, to describe a process completely, one should specify the initial and final states as well as the path it follows. Like this is the initial phase, this is the final phase, and the arrowhead basically represents the direction in which direction basically the process is going. Now the quasi-static equilibrium process. When a process proceeds in such a manner that the system remains infinitely close to the equilibrium state at all the times, that is a special process that is known as the quasi-process. In a quasi-process, it moves so slowly that the properties finds the time to adjust themselves, like the system that is at the state 1. Now the system is moved to the state number 2, but it has moved so slowly that the properties here like pressure and volume and here finds the time to adjust themselves, and when system approaches from this position to new position, the properties wouldn't change. So this process is known as the quasi-equilibrium process. It is in equilibrium during all the time when the system is in the moving state, and when the process moves so fast, it is termed as the non-quasi equilibrium. It will change the properties. Now here is a pressure volume diagram and there are the states of the system. This is the initial state, this is the final state, and this is basically the process path. Here you can see that when there is a compression process, you are compressing a gas inside the cylinder, you are reducing the volume and you are increasing the pressure. The prefix that are used to define the processes, these are basically the types of the processes, and there is a prefix that is used that is known as the iso, which is termed as the same. So the types of process are isothermal, isobaric and isochoric or isometric. An isothermal process is that during which the temperature remains constant. An isobaric, that is derived from the bar. You can clearly see that it is a process during which the pressure remains same. And isochoric is basically a process during which the specific volume remains constant. Now, cycle. A process during which the initial state and the final states are identical is known as cycle. Like you are moving from initial state 1 to a state 2, then you move from 2 to 3. Like I'll use this pen to show you how you define a cycle. You are moving from 1 to 2, that is process 1 to 2. Then you move 2 to 3, that is process 2 to 3. Then you move 3 to 4, that is process 3 to 4. And then you move from 4 to 1. Your initial and final states are coinciding. You are ending here when you have started. So this is basically known as a cycle, a process during which the initial and the final states of the system are identical or coincide with each other. Now the steady flow process. The term the steady implies no change with the time. Like steady flow, you can see that if there is no change with the time in the flow of a liquid, that flow is known as the steady flow. But that is not required for all the times. The flow can be unsteady, the flow can be transient. Okay, so a large number of engineering devices operate for long periods of the time under the same conditions, and they are classified as the steady flow devices, like the common router in our houses that basically lifts the water from the ground and deliver it to our house tank. Steady flow process, a process during which the fluid flows through the control volume steadily. There is no change with the time. The steady flow conditions can be closely approximated by the devices that are intended for the continuous operations, like the turbines, the pumps, the boilers, the condensers, the heat exchangers. These are all the steady flow devices. The fluid in them always flows with the same boundary conditions and same state postulates. During a steady flow process, fluid properties within the control volume may change with position but does not change with the time. What does it mean? It means the mass coming in and mass coming out should be equal. Here the temperature value is 300, here is temperature 250, here is 150, here is 200, but in the control volume the average temperature value should remain same. That is the condition for the steady flow process. Now the temperature and zeroth law of thermodynamics. The zeroth law of thermodynamics: if the two bodies are in thermal equilibrium with the third body, then they are also in thermal equilibrium with each other. By replacing the third body with a thermometer, the zeroth law can be restated as the two bodies are in thermal equilibrium if both have the same temperature, reading even if they are not in contact. Now the temperature scales. There are different temperature scales. All the temperature scales are based upon some easily reproducible states such as the freezing, boiling, ice point and the steam point. Ice point, a mixture of ice and water that is in equilibrium with air saturated vapor at 1 atm pressure and 0 degrees Celsius or 32 Fahrenheit, is known as the ice point of the water. Now the steam point, a mixture of liquid water and the water vapors in equilibrium of 1 atm and 100 degrees Celsius or 212 Fahrenheit, is known as the steam point of the water. Now the Celsius scale, degree Celsius is basically the SI unit for the temperature. There are different scales: degree Celsius, Kelvin scales. These are basically scales for the temperature, and kilopascal is for the pressure. Here you can see that the absolute vacuum, and this is basically the hypothetical value minus 273 degrees Celsius, that is not achievable. That is basically the hypothetical value of the temperature. A constant volume gas thermometer would read 273.15 at absolute zero pressure. Thermodynamic temperature scale. A temperature scale that is independent of the properties of any substance is known as the thermodynamic temperature scales. Kelvin scale SI and Rankine scale E. A temperature scale nearly identical to the Kelvin scale is the ideal gas temperature scale. The temperature on the scales are measured using constant volume gas thermometers. The common thermometers that we use in our houses are basically the mercury thermometers, reading in degrees Celsius and Fahrenheit. These are the conversions. Temperature in Kelvin scale is equals to temperature in degrees Celsius plus 273.15. Temperature in Rankine scale is equals to temperature in Fahrenheit plus 459.67. Temperature in Rankine scale is also equals to 1.8 temperature in Kelvin scales. Temperature in Fahrenheit scale is equals to 1.8 temperature in degree Celsius plus 32. Change in Kelvin is equals to change in degree Celsius. Change in Rankine is equals to change in Fahrenheit. The reference temperature in the Kelvin scale was the ice point, that is 273.15, which is the temperature at which the water freezes or the ice melts. The reference point was changed so much more precisely, reproducible points, and the triple point of the water is defined. The value of the triple point that is given is 273.16 Kelvin. Now in these pictures you can see that for the 0 degree Celsius you have minus 273.15. For 0 Kelvin the value of the temperature in degree Celsius is minus 273, and that is the boiling point in the Kelvin scale 273, and in degree Celsius that is equals to 0.01. Similarly, these are the values for the Fahrenheit scales. Now the pressure. Pressure is defined as the normal force exerted by the fluid per unit area. The unit is basically the Pascal. 1 Pascal is equal to 1 Newton per meter square, and these are basically the unit conversion. 1 bar is equals to how many pascals, how many megapascal, how many kilopascal. 1 atm is equals to how many pascals, kilopascals, and bars. So these are basically the units. A normal stress or the pressure on the feet of a chubby person is much greater than upon the feet of a slim person, because the weight upon a unit area is much more, or the force upon a unit foot area is much more as compared with a slim person. So that is why the value of pressure is more. Now the absolute pressure. The actual pressure at a given position is known as the absolute pressure. It is measured relative to the absolute vacuum. It is also known as absolute zero pressure. Now the gauge pressure. The difference between the absolute pressure and the local atmospheric pressure is known as the gauge pressure. P gauge is equals to P of absolute minus atmospheric pressure. The most pressure measuring devices are calibrated to read zero in the atmosphere, so they indicate the gauge pressure. Now what is gauge pressure? Gauge pressure is basically any pressure measuring device that reads the value of pressure is known as the gauge pressure. Absolute pressure is basically the pressure that is exactly present on that body, but all the bodies are present in the environment and there is a certain value of the atmospheric pressure. So when you are measuring the gauge pressure, it is necessary that you minus the atmospheric pressure from the absolute value. Now the vacuum pressure. Pressure that are below the atmosphere are treated as the vacuum pressure. The formula is vacuum pressure is equal to atmospheric pressure minus absolute pressure. Throughout the lectures in the book, the pressure P would denote the absolute value of the pressure, unless and otherwise you have specified that what type of the pressure it is. Now this is basically the zero line or the baseline where the value of the pressure is 1. This is the value of the atmospheric pressure, and above which your gauge starts reading the value of the gauge, the pressure. So you can clearly see that absolute pressure is basically the sum of your gauge pressure and atmospheric pressure. So to find the value of the absolute pressure, what you will do that you will have the value at the device that is known as the gauge pressure, and you will add that value into the atmospheric pressure to have the absolute value. And what you will do in the vacuum pressure, you will have the value of the atmospheric pressure, then you will have the value of the vacuum pressure, and this is basically the absolute value. So you are basically, you will minus the value of the vacuum from the absolute, and you will have basically your ATM pressure. Or to find the vacuum, what you will do, simply you will basically minus the value of the absolute pressure from the atmospheric value. Now the variations of the pressure with the depth. When you are treating a liquid, the value of the pressure is equals to rho gz or rho gh. Z is basically the depth or the height. When there is a difference of the pressure P2 minus P1, that is equals to rho g into delta z. So the value is equals to P of ATM plus rho gh, where P gauge is equals to rho gh. This is basically ATM pressure, and that is the absolute value of the pressure. Now the next is the Pascal law. The pressure applied to the confined fluid increases the pressure throughout the same amount. Like there is basically the common example that you have seen in our daily life. There is a car lifter that is present inside the car wash system. You will apply the less force, and as a result you have the larger force because of the area. Here F1 is equals to P1 A1. Here F2 is equals to P2 A2. Now according to the Pascal law, P1 is equals to P2. Here F1 over A1 is equals to F2 over A2. So F2 over F1 is equals to A2 over A1. By applying the smaller value of the pressure, you are having the larger value of the pressure just because of the increased value of the area. Lifting of large weight by the small force by the application of Pascal's law. Again, Pascal law states that the pressure applied to a confined fluid increases the pressure throughout with the same amount, as the liquid cannot be compressed. So the force that you apply will simply transmit, and it starts increasing when the area is increased. Now the manometers. It is commonly used to measure the small and the moderate the pressure differences. Manometer is a device that is used to measure the small or the moderate value of the pressure differences. A manometer contains one or the more fluids such as mercury, water, alcohol and the oil. Fluid comes in, fluid comes out, and this is basically a manometer. So the height between these two limbs will tell you the value of the pressure. Before that area, here is the height that is known as A, and the difference between these two is basically the H. So here at this point you have the pressure P1, here you have pressure P2. So the final pressure P2 is equals to pressure at this point P1 plus rho 1 at this point, rho 1 G into A plus H minus rho 2 G H minus rho 1 G H. So P2 minus P1 or P1 minus P2, difference in the pressure is equals to rho 2 minus rho 1 into GH. Now here in this container there are basically the three fluids. Fluid 1 having height H1, fluid 2 having height H2, fluid 3 having height H3. This is the ATM pressure, and at that point we are basically concerned to measure the pressure. How you will measure the pressure at this point 1 P1? This is equals to the sum of all the pressures, like P of ATM plus rho 1 G into H1 plus rho 2 G into height of the second liquid plus rho 3 G into height of the third liquid. So that is how you measure the pressure in a manometric tube. The basic manometer is basically there is a container in which the gas is contained, and these are the limbs of the manometer, and the height between these two limbs. For example, that there is a liquid that is present and that is pressurizing this liquid, so because of that there will be change in height of these two, and the value of the pressure is equals to atmospheric pressure plus rho into GH, where H is basically the difference in the heights. Other pressure measuring devices are the burden pressure tube, pressure transducer, strain gauges, and piezoelectric substances. Now the burden pressure tube, it consists of a hollow metal tube bent into a hook like, and it is closed and connected with a dial indicator. So it is also known as a C-type pressure measuring device. When the liquid comes in, due to the weight and the pressure of the liquid, this tube starts deflecting, it starts contracting, and the needle is connected with this point, so the value of directly upon the gauge. Now the pressure transducers. Pressure transducers use various techniques to convert the pressure effect on an electric effect, such as change in voltage, resistance, or the capacitance. These are basically the electrical devices in which the change in pressure is measured in terms of voltage, current, or the resistance. Similarly, we have strain gauges. Again, the phenomena is same. Then there are the piezoelectric transducer. They are also called the solid state pressure transducers. Work on the principle that an electric potential is generated in the crystalline substance when it is subjected to the mechanical pressure. Again, the phenomena is same, just like in the other transducer. When there is a value of pressure that is changed, there is a generation of the electric field, and because of that there is a change in the current or the value of the voltage. Now the barometer and the atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure is measured by a device known as the barometer. Thus the atmospheric pressure is often referred as the barometric pressure, because the device that is measuring the atmospheric pressure is barometer. A frequently used pressure unit is the standard atmosphere, which is defined as the pressure produced by the column of the mercury. This is basically the column of mercury, having the height basically H is equals to 760 mm of Hg, and the whole experiment is conducted at 0 degrees Celsius. Here the density value is 13,595 kg per meter cube under standard gravitational acceleration, where the value of G is 9.807. This is basically the barometer. This is the bath of the mercury. This is the column of the mercury having the height 760 mm, and this is the rays inside the column to measure the value of the ATM. through this height you will measure the value of ATM. You will use the density value this, gravity this, and height that you are getting actually. So by multiplying all these quantities you will have the value of ATM. Now the length or the cross-sectional area of the tube has no effect upon the height of the fluid column of a barometer, provided that the tube diameter is larger enough to avoid the surface tension effects. So the height is not fixed basically. You can use any height or any area. Like if you are reducing the height, you are increasing the dia so that the value of the area remains same. So this is to basically recognize you that due to the change in the height there is no effect basically upon the ATM pressure. Now the problem solving techniques that are used in the thermodynamics, how there is a problem modeling and how you can solve a thermodynamic problem. First step is basically to the problem statement, how you state the problem. Second one is the schematic. From the statement of the problem you will draw a schematic diagram. The third step is the assumptions and the approximation. After the understanding of these schematic you will have some kind of assumptions, some kinds of approximations, like the value of G can be treated as 10. Then there is assumption that the value is same throughout. Then the fourth step is the physical law. After these assumptions you will try basically to apply some thermodynamic law upon your problem. Then the step 5 is basically the properties. Then you will apply the properties, which properties are changing, which are remaining constant. And in step 6 you have basically the calculation of all these properties. And at step 7, when you will have the results, then there will be the problem reasoning, verification and discussion. You will comment upon the results. EES is basically an engineering equation solver. EES is a program that solves system of a linear and non-linear algebraic and differential equations that are used in the thermodynamics. So this is basically the summary of the topic that we have covered today. So that is all from today's lecture. Thank you so much.